Hello, my fellow speakers. This is Brian, the speaker for the dead, coming to you today with another video on The Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance. So this will be my review for the first episode of this TV show, an original show by Netflix. We're going to be covering basically the topic of and going through this kind of scene by scene, showing a little bit of the actual show. And just kind of going down that road and kind of talking about everything that my feelings on it as I went through the good and the bad. But before we do that, I want to touch on the original film and pay somewhat of an homage to the original film because it's very important to me. This movie, The Dark Crystal, the original, is one of my all-time favorite films. Okay, I can watch this movie over and over and over again and never get tired of it. I love that film. I love it. So let me tell you my experience with The Dark Crystal, because I want you to understand where I'm coming from on this and why this is such an important thing and why some of my feelings might be the way they are about this new series. And kind of give you maybe some examples of good ways of doing this and bad ways of doing this, what they're trying to do with this new series. So when I was a kid, I didn't get to see this movie in the theater. I wish I had. I mean, that would be an epic thing to remember. But my first experience with The Dark Crystal was back in the 80s when I was a kid. Yeah, way back in the, I'm going to do an old man story here, but might be interesting to some of you guys who never had to experience it this way. You used to have to, when VCRs were big and they'd just come out, they were very prohibitively expensive. They're like $1,000 when a brand new car cost like $5,000 to $8,000. So that's how expensive they were. I mean, it'd be the equivalent of paying like $8,000 for a DVD player, or $3,000 for a DVD player today. Any new technology is like that whenever it comes out. I mean, anything even coming out today. Blu-rays were very expensive when they first came out, and then the price comes down. It always works that way. Because they're trying to recoup their investment costs in creating this new technology. Anyway, so when VCRs first came out, they were very big, but they were so expensive, like you'd have to rent them from a store, from a video store, and we had a little grocery store in our area that did this, but it was a very rural community, so it took quite a while just to get a night where we could reserve one and get a VCR. So you'd get this VCR, you'd rent your movies, take it home, and then you'd have to take it and connect it into the old analog TVs. You have to connect it into the old antenna wires, and then it could go into a converter box onto a coaxial cable that went into the back of the VCR. You guys probably don't even know what a coaxial cable is if you're very young. But then that's how you'd watch the show. It wasn't high quality, but it was as good as any normal TV that would come over an antenna. You'd have to turn it to a specific channel, and I mean, it was a real process actually getting to watch a movie back in those days. But I remember the first time I watched The Dark Crystal, I was blown away. Absolutely blown away. I mean, I grew up watching the Muppets and watching, Sesame Street with the Muppet characters. And I mean, I loved Jim Henson. I absolutely loved Jim Henson and all of his creations. I was a huge fan as a kid. Just like, and you guys, if you've watched my channel, I was big into Star Trek and science fiction, but I was also very much into fantasy. I remember watching films like I just lost the name of it. It's a dragon film, Dragon Slayer, pardon me. I loved Dragon Slayer, and it's kind of a scary film for young kids. I mean, not scary by today's standards, but it's got some pretty good suspenseful moments in it. But I love that stuff. I love genre films. I love a lot of different things. I love westerns. I love science fiction. You'd be hard pressed to find a genre of film at this point that I don't care for. Anime, the whole 9 yards. I love it. But Jim Henson is probably one of the things that inspired me most in that imaginative, creative. I mean, he was just a giant at this. I mean, taking mundane things like frogs and bears and stuff, and making them living, breathing characters and stuff like that, that would come to life on your TV, and they were funny, and they were running a vaudeville show, and or an old comedy show, and I mean, it was great stuff. So when The Dark Crystal came out, it was unlike anything that had been being done by Henson at that point. And I remember it was a big deal when that came out. There was documentaries, there was like news stories on what they were doing, and I remember seeing all the build up to this film coming out. And then it came out, and then I got to watch it and was absolutely blown away. From the moment it starts, that it's got that epic sequence of music that runs throughout the whole film, and it alters and changes based on the mood of the film, where there's kind of the more love story end of things, and the suspense end of things, but it's all based on that original theme that you get right off the bat. That as the universal sign is coming up, and as we saw yesterday when I played that, it's boom, there it is, that theme that introduces you to the film. And seriously, I could be anywhere and hear the beginning notes of that theme now, and I could tell you immediately, that's the Dark Crystal. And that's what great films do. Star Wars does it, Star Trek does it, genre films in general, and even non-genre films do that, because they realize that emotional connection to a film's music is key. You have to feel that music coming in. I mean, when you hear the Mission Impossible theme, you know exactly what you're going to see. It just pulls you in, and boom, you're automatically in that world. And that's what this theme song did for me. Immediately pulls you in, tells you this is going to be different. This is going to be epic. You get tingles. You're just like, wow, yeah. So I mean, right off the bat, the score is just absolutely great for this. And I'm using my handy dandy notebook here, like Blue's Clues, I guess, so that I can give you because I watched all this stuff with notes so that I can make sure I don't miss stuff as I'm going through here. But it is the lore and the storyline that is created in the original film is epic, and it is fantastic. It is grand. It is on a huge scale, a planet type scale, and it's just this sweeping epic that you're about to be pulled into. And what's amazing is that they give you these little historical blurbs as they're introducing each new character group and each new character and each little thing. And it's amazing how much information is packed into those introductions to the different groups. I mean, and it's like somebody painstakingly went through there and picked out every single word so that they were giving you the maximum amount of information in the minimalist amount of time, so that they could grab you using that score, pull you in, tell you some of the history, get you up to speed fast, and then send you off on the epic story with Jen, who's the main character, and Kira later on in the story. If you haven't seen it, by the way, should have said this going in, there will be spoilers. There will be spoilers. So if you have not seen this, if you have not seen the original film, if you haven't seen the original film, too late. Sorry, it's ruined. But if you have not seen the episodes, this is the first episode of Age of Resistance, don't watch my review. Turn it off right now. Go watch the show. Come back. But Jen and Kira, it's the story of them, and they're falling in love, but the love story is really subtle, which is what I really loved. Like, you see these two develop feelings, and not this overt boom in your face kind of way. You watch them develop together, and suddenly it's just like, yeah, they're in love. And it's subtle. It's not in your face. It doesn't feel like you're watching a romantic movie. But it's these two cool characters that end up growing together and falling in love without even knowing that that's what's going on. And it's so great in this amazing world that was helped create by Brian Froud and Jim Henson. Brian Froud did all the artwork, and I think the design for the monsters, the characters, and all of it, along with Jim Henson. Jim Henson was integral to all of this. But this story also follows the storyline of the Usurks, which is what the race is called that ended up splitting and becoming the Uriks and the Skeksis, or the Mystics and the Skeksis. They have different names. But you never find that out in the film. You find that out later on. Because so let's just pull this up here, and I want to go through this with you where some of this stuff came from. So here's the the screen for the Age of Resistance, the new TV show, and this is a graphic novel that was created by Brian Froud and Jim Henson and some other characters or creators, that tells you the backstory. If you want to know what happened in the world of the Dark Crystal before the Dark Crystal, this is where you go. Okay? You go to these 3 graphic novels. There's 3 of them. This one, Volume 2, which there's one of the Urix, or however you say their name, right there. And then there's the 3rd one. Now, you can go buy these. You can go look them up. You can download them. I believe from Amazon is where I was finding these images earlier today. But this is the backstory. This tells you how you get from Urix and what's going on there to where you are at the beginning of the Dark Crystal. Now, this TV show is supposed to be doing the same thing, but it's not following this storyline. I don't know why it's not, because Aughra has a son in this storyline, and you don't see him so far in this. I'm really kind of lost at where they're starting with this series, to be quite honest with you, because they seem to be jumping around and like not really following the history as it was outlined in the original film, which is where most of my knowledge comes from. I have never had a chance to actually read these. I didn't even know these existed till about 6 months ago when I was watching a video review of The Dark Crystal by a creator that I like called figures. Don't you love that when your brain just and it's gone? Happens to me more and more, must be getting old. Anyway, but he does a review where he mentions these graphic novels, and I'm just like, where were those when I was a kid? I'd have totally got those. I'd have bothered my parents until they got them for me. And, so it's there they are. So I'm telling you, if you don't know, here they are. Go look them up, find them, and you can find out the backstory as told by Jim Henson and Brian Froud, the people who actually did the movie. There's also another series of books that were made just in the last couple of years, which I think they're basing this new series on loosely, because even just reading the synopsises for those books, it sounds different than what they're doing even in this TV show. So I'm just like, you guys can't seem to follow anybody's story. So I guess they want to do their own thing. It's just like, but anyway. So you can go and get these books and look up and find out for yourself. I'm planning on getting them because I want to find out what Jim Henson's views of how this story was supposed to go from the beginning. Because I love, like I said, I can't say it enough. I love Jim Henson, and I love this film. And that's a tough spot for these guys to be in. I'll admit that. Because I am very much an originalist. I am very much a right down the line kind of guy when it comes to this creative stuff, where somebody takes somebody else's work and then they try and do something else, and they try and build another story off of it, or tell a different story, or tell a backstory, or whatever. When it is not the original people who did that story, there's always a danger. Now, let me explain the right way to do this. Now, I use this in the example of I had a guy that was kind of not agreeing with me on my original video, which is fine. I invite comments, negative, positive. I just ask people to be respectful. And this guy wasn't being very respectful. He was respectful to me, but then there was another person who'd made a comment on the video and had said something about homosexuality, which everybody's entitled to their opinion. I hate to tell this guy, but everybody's entitled to their opinion on that. And he went after this person, started calling them Nazis, and was doing some really stuff. So don't do that, please. I'm begging you. If you're watching my channel, please be respectful to other commenters and to me. If you want to disagree with me, great. I'm open to that discussion. By no means do I think I am an expert on all things other than an expert of my own opinion and how I feel about this. I'm just trying to have an open dialogue and maybe give you some insights into things that maybe you hadn't thought of. So, but through this guy's comments, he was kind of upset that I was kind of taken this down. He was just like, well, we should be grateful that Netflix is even putting this kind of money into a story, you know, where everything's CG now. And anyway, and I'm just like, well, yeah, but you can't look at it that way. Just because somebody, if somebody takes a great idea and then craps all over it and then tries to polish the turd that's on top of the great idea now, you're still just polishing a turd. Now, I'm not saying that's what this is. I'm saying just because you get a new shiny turd doesn't make it any less of a turd. I apologize for the graphic, visualization there. But seriously, you have to, you can't just go like, well, we're lucky we just got anything. No, that's the wrong way to think. I want good stuff. I want great content. I want good ideas to be taken and made better. Because that's what makes things awesome. Not take somebody else's great idea and go, oh, they're stupid. I'm the best of all. I know how to make this story better than they did. I'm going to do this and this and this and this and this. I'm totally changing their story because they just didn't realize what they had. Yeah, they did. They're the ones that came up with it. And if you think you're so damn smart, go create your own thing. Go do your own thing and leave somebody else's story alone. If you cannot pay respect to the original creator's vision, leave it alone. Put it down, walk away. That toy's not for you. You don't respect it. You don't understand what it is. Put it down and walk away. Now, I don't know if that's what's happening here, but I'm kind of getting that vibe. You want a perfect example of how not to do this? Just look at what they've done to Star Wars. Star Wars is the perfect example of what you don't do. You don't take great ideas, great characters, great music, great everything, and then tweak it up and twist it and torture it into a shape it was never meant to be in with the sequel films that they're doing now, and then crap all over the fans when they get mad at the fact of what you've done to their series. Because you think you're smarter than the guy that created it. And you're telling George Lucas, I don't need you. Get out of here, old man. Go shave your beard. Well, now, George Lucas also gave us the prequels. So, you got to take this with a grain of salt because George almost messed up his own thing. So, in my opinion, I was not a huge fan of the prequels. They're better than what we're getting now, but they weren't as great as what George's first 3 films were. Anyway, now, to give you the opposite end of the spectrum, you can look at the movie Stargate with James Spader and Kurt Russell. Great film. Great science fiction film. I love Egypt. I love Egyptology and all that kind of stuff, so I'm fascinated by the subject anyway. But they took this and really came up with something cool and unique to do for a film. And I loved what they did in that original film. Well, a couple years after the film was done, a group of people came along and decided to make Stargate into a TV show called Stargate SG-1, where it continues that story on from right where, or about 6 months to a year after the original story was there. And it is epically good. A great TV show. And this should be taught in film school of how to do this properly. How to take a film and then transfer it into TV format and to do it right. Because they took the film, they kept all of the lore, they kept everything from the original film. They did not come in and go, we're going to fix that, we're going to change that, we're going to get rid of that character, we're going to change him, and we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to make them somebody they never were. They didn't do any of that. Came in, used the same characters. They had different actors playing them, but they tried to get people who looked like the characters that were in the original film and stayed true to that original character type. They kept the same storyline. They only tweaked it slightly in just the way the aliens look that took over the body from the original film that became the Pharaoh Ra. It became the god Ra and stuff. And even that they kind of explain in the TV show of why that ended up being the way it was. But that is so well done. because they stayed absolutely true to the story and the lore that was set up in the film. They did not try and go in and change it or retroactively alter the past. They tweaked just enough to make the story work, but stayed absolutely true to the story and the lore, other than those minor tweaks. And then tried to make those look as natural and as good as they possibly could. And it ran for 12 seasons. 12 seasons, and had 2 spin-off series. Stargate Atlantis, Stargate SGU, which was awful. Stargate SGU is where it went off the rails. But the others are great. The original SG-1 is an epically good science fiction film. Doesn't get near the play that I think it should, or near the recognition for how to do a TV show from a movie right. But that gives you an idea of how you do that. You don't alienate your fans. You don't try and think you're smarter than the guys that thought up the idea in the first place. You just keep that and build epically great stories off of it. Sorry, I got a tickle on my nose. So that's how you do this. That's how it's done. Don't try and screw around. Don't try and mix the formula up. Because if you're going to do that, I don't know why Hollywood does this now. If that's what you want to do, if you, this is a good story, but I'm just going to change everything about it and go with my vision, then leave it alone. Go create your own vision in the first place. Don't screw with somebody else's ideas and then try and claim, it's like dressing everybody up in Star Wars figures and then trying to act out Shakespeare. It doesn't work. I mean, you're just, Shakespeare would be so much better if we did it in the Star Wars. And yet you can have those elements in there, but it's just like all you're doing is telling a lie. You're saying that this story is going to be about this, but it's not. They're going to completely change everything and alter the characters, alter the lore, alter how the Force works, or how the Gelflings act, or whatever it is, in whatever genre, whatever film. That's what they do, and it's stupid, and they need to stop doing it. If you find something great and you want to take it and go further, you don't make it greater by crapping on what came before. Okay, lecture over. So, going off the bat here, this is going to be a tough sell for me, and I knew that going in because I have such an affinity for the original film. It's up there on the pinnacle of what I think makes an epically good fantasy film. So we're going to jump in here and we're going to take a look at this original series episode. We're going to go back and we're going to watch the intro because I want to point out the differences to you in what is what I think's good, what's bad, right off the bat, and kind of discuss this story and how it's set up. So we're going to be pausing periodically through this, so just so I don't get a copyright strike.
Another world.
Okay, right there. The original film starts off, and it's da, 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 da. Okay, I'll never do that again. I apologize. That's awful. I shouldn't try and just, Lord, I apologize, and be with the Star and Pygmies down there in New Guinea. Amen. That's for you, Larry, cable guy. Anyway, it starts up, da, and it's very jarring, and it's like, okay. Now, I'll tell you that the graphics, the visual effects for this opening sequence are really good. They really are. And I have to give them full credit for that.
Another time. Another age. Thra. A wondrous planet circling 3...
Okay. So now Thra is the name of this world, and it always was. It was never mentioned in the original film, but it is called Thra. So they got that right. Yay. Point one. So that's correct, and so it's like I say, at least they're trying to get some of the history right, some of it.
Suns, and at its center, the crystal of truth.
Okay, so here's like I said, The visual shots and effects are really pretty good for a TV show. They're good. I can't fault them for that. Although I'm just wondering, where's the castle? Who built the castle? Now, what I would have changed here. Now, I'm not saying this is bad. Okay, don't misunderstand. I'm just saying if this was me and I'm doing this, I would have showed sped up cinematography or filming of the castle being built around the crystal. Just to show and given a little bit of the history there of how the castle got put there. But see, they skip over that, and then it's like, and see, this is what Jim Henson did not do in the original film. He gave the details that were needed, explained what was going on, like I said, and then boom, then you're off to the races. These guys are jumping. They're jumping around. They're skipping things. They're supposed to be telling a prequel story, but they're leaving large chunks of stuff out that they could have explained here right in the beginning of this sequence. Now, please don't come at me and say, well, it's not important. Well, it kind of is. The castle is one of the central things that the stories are based around. And okay, yes, it's not the most important thing, but I would have liked to have seen how it got put there. Who built it? Why'd they build it? Blah, blah, blah. And I guess they kind of infer that later on. So let's keep going, and you can tell me if I'm crazy.
The heart of Thra and the source of all life. Since the land was young, Aughra protected the crystal, for she knew that the crystal connected all the creatures of Thra. But closest to her heart were the Gelfling. 7 clans of Gelfling call Thra home. From the proud Vapra in the mountain city of Harar, the most cultured of the Gelfling, who rule over the 7 clans, to the fierce Stonewood.
Okay, so there's 2 stone. Sorry, I'm pausing again for copyright issues. So there's 2 clans. They said there's 7. There's that's 2. So this is the Stonewoods. And here in a minute, you'll start to see my problem.
Who dwell in the endless forest, renowned for their prowess in battle. And the gentle Groton, who live deep beneath the ground, in perfect harmony with all of Thra, forgotten by the world above. For uncounted...
Okay. 7 clans, and you show me 3. I have a question. Where the hell are the other ones? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's 4. There's 4 missing. You only said you're only telling us about 3. Now I'm gonna tell you here. This opening sequence and stuff here feels very much like Game of Thrones to me. Watching that opening sequence for Game of Thrones, I feel like somebody watched Game of Thrones and went, "Hey," I'm like, all right, we're gonna do that almost exactly. We're gonna have somebody talking in the background instead of just music playing. But it's pretty cool. It's like, well, way to be original. So yeah. So they tell you that there's 7 clans and then only tell you where 3 of them live. Now I don't know if that means like the other 4 clans live within the areas that are predominantly these 3 clans. But they don't tell you that. They don't explain it. You cannot do that, okay? You cannot say there's 7 clans and then tell you where 3 of them are. If you're going to tell us that there's 7 clans, you got to tell us where they are or how they relate to each. I mean, you got to finish that history lesson just a little bit. Now, maybe they plan to do that later on, but like you're instantly left with all these questions like, wait, what? It's like, did you guys learn how to do math recently? You know, the new what do they call that? There's like what they talk about in the second Incredibles. Math is math. Serious. Like, is this the new age math where we start out with 7 and we end up with 3? But nobody tells you how to get there. You got to follow the rest of the story problem to figure out where you get to the rest of the other 7, the other 4. Anyway, so sorry, I'm being a little nitpicky here. I know, but it's just, I'm telling you the things that caught my attention. I'm just like, 1, 2, 3. It's like how many licks to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll Tootsie Pop? A 1, a 2, a 3. That's it. No more gelflings. So, yeah, sorry, but wrong. That's the wrong way to do that.
Millennia, all of Thra existed in perfect balance. But then, new beings came, not of Thra. The Skeksis.
Okay, and again, at this point, I was going, new beings came, and they were the Skeksis. Wait, what? Okay.
They bewitched Aughra with stories of the universe and built her an orrery so that she might discover the mystery.
So they know about the universe. They're all about the universe. Tell her about it. But they choose to live on Thra.
Of the cosmos for herself. And so, Aughra turned her eye to the stars. And entrusted the crystal of truth to the Skeksis.
Okay. All right. So here I'm back to one of my original questions. Where'd the castle come from? Because in the film, that's what I'm almost having to come out, and I said this in my video yesterday, I'm almost having to decide that I have to say that the film didn't exist, which is instantly a problem for me. I want the film to exist. I want the film to exist. I don't want to have to discount one of the greatest Jim Henson creations ever so that I can watch your creation using his dressing. Like, you've got all the right characters and all the right puppets and all the right look, which, by the way, this is stunning. The characters, the looks of the puppetry, they have painstakingly either gotten the original ones out of storage or completely recreated them in almost absolute perfection. They've really done a good job with that. Total kudos for them for being that detail-oriented. But if you're going to be that detail-oriented, you know what you need to have details on first? The story. You need to have the history planned out. You need to be able to explain the questions. I can't believe that cause if I have these questions, how is it that everybody who created this didn't have the same questions? Hey, Steve, why are we only talking about 3 of these tribes when these clans? We said there's 7, right? Hey, Sarah, do you know why we're only talking about 3 of these? What are we saving the rest of them for a mystery at some time in the distant future? Why the hell would we tell them that there's 7 and then only talk about 3? And who built the castle? Because you see, we're kind of in the original film, it's kind of alluded to that it must have been the Uruks or the Uriks that built the castle. And then before the crystal cracked, we know from the film how that happened. But apparently that's not... See, they mention that in later episodes. Oh, spoiler. They do mention, but it's already in the movie, so you know what happened. They talk about how the crystal got to the way it is now by being corrupted by the Skeksis, and then it was cracked. You see, that happened the other way around. It was cracked, then it was corrupted because it was cracked, because it was damaged by the arrogance of the Uruks. We learned that from the movie. Okay, now they're going back and trying to change this and rewrite it, or trying to alter the story around in such a way that it doesn't jibe with the original histories given. Now maybe they're going to correct this in later episodes, but if you want people to get drawn right into this, you've got to follow that storyline. You've got to do this right off the bat. My other problem, and it's a little thing, I like Sigourney Weaver. I love Sigourney Weaver. She's a great actress. And I love her in films. I love her in Avatar. I loved her in Aliens. One of the toughest female science fiction characters ever was Ripley. And she's iconic. I mean, she is really good. And that's another criticism that this guy got. I said, why didn't they find somebody who was more like the original person to do the intro for this? They went and got Sigourney Weaver. Oh, she's got a big name. She's well known. We'll get her to do it. She's in Finding Dory. If I'm creating this, if anybody with a brain is creating this, you're going to go, okay, guys, you're sitting around that brainstorming table figuring out how to make the show work. You're going to say, we need to call in all the member berries we can. We need to call in all of the memories. We need to pull our audience that was there before. We need to pull them in and then and make it really great so that we can pull more audience in than just the original ones. Like I said, Hollywood isn't doing this right now. They're like, nah, we're smarter. And so like they should have got someone who sounded almost the same or found the same guy to do that intro again. Because then you've instantly called up the feelings from the film. Now, not because Sigourney Weaver isn't great. Sigourney Weaver's great. She does great voice work. She does great acting. I'm talking, the reason I don't think she should have been the one to do it is because you need to pull people back in. You need to give them familiarity with this world. You need, because there's going to be enough changes going along because you're using other people for the character, because I can't hear any of the original voices. Now, maybe I'm wrong on this. I can't hear any of the original voices. Through this episode, every character is voiced differently. Now, they got Mark Hamill to play the voice of the scientist. I love Mark Hamill, so I can overlook that one. But he sounds differently than the original scientist. The Garthim Master, he sounds different. I can't remember the guy that's always in gold and he's like really pompous and pious. I think he's like the ceremonies master or something like that. He in the original one has this very deep voice, when he's talking about that stuff, now, by the law, he must pay. Really deep, really like powerful. And in this one, he's like, I have a knife for something just like that. It's one of the lines that gets said. And I'm sitting there looking at him going, did somebody kick you in the nuts? What happened to your voice? They didn't even find somebody who talks in the same octave range as the original character. That's like getting my daughter to play the ceremonies master. Hi! That's not going to work. You're going to pull people out of the story. I mean, you've got to pay attention to these details. Yes, you don't have to get the original same guys, but you got to get people that sound remotely the same. Otherwise, you're going to pull people out. When you're introducing people back into this story, they need to feel comfortable. They need to feel welcomed back to a comfortable place, back home, as it were. Pardon me. You need to bring them back into the story, not jar them with that horrible intro, and then you're flying through the stars. There's no epic score. There's no callback to the original film theme, which they should have started with that original film theme, and then if they didn't want to use that, if they were afraid like, oh, this is going to feel too familiar, too like the old, they should have started with that and then slowly moved away and morphed into a different but still recognizable theme that can run through this. Game of Thrones has that. Star Trek, Star Wars, James Bond, all of these epic films have something that is very uniquely theirs. Great. Now my voice is going to start going. But it's very important that you do that. You've got to call, if you're going back to an old story, you've got to call back all of those memories, and you've got to do it right off the bat. You've got to hit every note just almost perfect. And then if you want to slowly move away and go in a little different direction, okay. But if you've done it that way, the original fans feel like you respect what came before. And the new fans can see what came before, and then when they go back to the film, if they've never seen that film, they can go back to the original film, and for them, it's not going to be jarring. They're going to be like, oh yeah, that's how it was when that started out, and then, they're going to be called back. So you're maintaining that continuity, and continuity in these kind of stories where you're continuing on, it's the most important damn thing you can do. You have to maintain continuity through a story, and if you can't do that, don't do it at all. How hard is that? You've painstakingly recreated this world, and that's where you stopped? Like you ran out of creative mojo at that point, and you went, well, I don't feel like going and finding an acting boy or voice actor that can do it the same way. Now, kudos, the gal that they got to play Algra sounds very much like the Algra from the film. They did a very good job with her. Now, all these new characters that they introduced, and like I said, there's too many for me to try and keep up with all the names. We'll get better at that as we go into the next reviews. But oh my gosh. Like, they should have done the original characters as close to the original voices and everything as humanly possible. Now, Chamberlain is pretty good. He's off, but he's close enough that it's just like, all right, I'm with you on that one. I'm with you on that one. Now, the Emperor, he dies at the beginning of the first one. We never see him, but he's got a great voice. The guy who's voicing the Emperor of the Skeksis, really well done. Deep, gruff. You can tell he's a powerful character, and it comes off. And so you've got to make this work. And for me, they're misstepping right off the bat here, and it's such a missed opportunity. Not that this is going to derail everything, but seriously, it created a real stumbling block for me right out of the gate, and that didn't need to happen.
Almost 1,000 trine have passed since the Skeksis declared.
Okay, now another one of my little nitpicks is they talk about 1,000 years, blah blah blah, in their own intro, 1,000 years, blah 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 blah, and now all of a sudden they've changed the time scale, 1,000 tron. It's like, why didn't you start out with that? Why didn't you explain that for every, you've got to explain this world that you're coming into. If you're going to start using other terminology, I'm assuming a tron is like a year. It's just like, and it's not like you need to be spoon-fed everything, but you can't like switch between different time scales and then not explain what you're doing there, because it becomes too jarring. You need to have a character or somebody explain, well, once they were called years, but then, blah, 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 whatever. Anyway, or it needs to be explained by the narrator. Otherwise, you just got people halfway lost in like, what? Wait, is 1,000 tron? Is that 2 hours? It's like people who grew up with the metric system trying to, listening to American, talk about, inches and feet, or vice versa. You're going to confuse people. You're going to lose people right there. Now, most people would just blow it off and be like, your brain kind of connects. 1,000 years, 1,000 tron. Okay, we're good. Move on. But like I said, just if you're going to go that way, start out that way. Don't try and switch between the two. You're just going to confuse people.
Themselves lords of Thra.
That was the Emperor. That's the ceremony's master.
Now,
I don't know what his name is.
Again, the Skeksis gather in secret as another day dawns.
They gather in secret in a castle that you'll come to find out is full of gelflings. Okay.
To steal life from the crystal they have sworn to protect. so they may replenish themselves. Cheat death by harnessing the power of their treasure, their prize, their prisoner, the Dark Crystal.
Okay. So they're trying to do a similar intro to the original. Here's my problem. I know this is going to be a long review. I apologize. But I'm nothing if not annoyingly thorough. Not really, but now in the original, they talk about when they meet for this ceremony, it is to replenish themselves using the power of the sun. As the first sun climbs to its peak, they gather in the crystal to gain new life from the sun. So it's the sun that they're using the crystal as an intermediary to gain life from the sun. Not the crystal. They're not stealing life from the crystal. They're using the crystal to gain energy from the sun. So there again, another thing that they've changed and altered, that they're stealing life from the crystal. Now, it also alludes to the fact that, now it never says it specifically, but it alludes to the fact that there were more of them than there are right here. So right here, we have a visual, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 Skeksis shown here. Now, in the original film, there's 10. And it alludes to the fact that in history, there were more. That they are a dying race, trapped within themselves in a dying land. Okay, the original story does this intro 100 times better. And now we're left wondering, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, we're starting out with less Skeksis in a prequel than there were in the original film. Okay, how do you explain that? How do you explain that there's only 8 when there were 10 before? It's like they watched the movie, waited for the people to die through the movie. It's like they're trying to do a or a sequel and a prequel at the same time. Okay? Now, it looks beautiful. It does. It looks like they've painstakingly redone this whole set, this whole thing, all the characters, except they're missing at least 2. There's 2 that they're missing right off the bat, and there was supposed to be more than that. But now there are only 10. Remember that line from the original film? So now there's only 10. That's an allusion to the fact that there were once more. Now, maybe there was only 15 originally. I don't know. They never tell us, and maybe that's in those books that I showed you. But they're not doing those books, and they're not doing the books that are coming after, that came after. They're doing their own thing here, and they're not following any continuity. Did Rian Johnson do this? Is he involved? Is somebody trying to subvert my expectations? Okay. Now, I can overlook some of this, and I did watch this whole episode, but about halfway through the original episode, and I think I said this in my other video, I was just like, all right, I'm getting bored. You know what I never felt watching the original film, and I still don't to this day? Boredom. I've never felt boredom, and I've seen that movie like 1,000 times. So let's continue here for a minute, because maybe I'm crazy and this just suddenly gets so much better.
The crystal fails us once again.
Well, what did you expect?
Now, I think that was supposed to be the Garthim Master, which I guess they didn't quite get him right.
Nothing yesterday, nothing the day before.
I'm not sure who that character's supposed to be, because she wasn't even in the original film that I ever saw. Which is, all right, great. Let's add Grandma Pustules into the mix. So she wasn't a character before, but now we got one.
Why? Why does this happen?
Just look at the crystal. We've taken too much. It's gluttony. Pure gluttony.
Pathetic! You sound like frightened podlings.
Okay, well. Anyway, so we're gonna stop like watching the episode now, but so that's where we're at. They're already off the story. They're already not carrying forward with what should have been carried forward with. They haven't gone back to the right time. It seems like they're starting this prequel at the end of the other film, which does not make any sense because they don't have enough Skeksis. I don't know if they ran out of budget or why they don't have enough Skeksis to show. There should have been more than even 10 at this point in history. But anyway, so we're going to jump ahead here. They're there at the thing. The crystal's not giving them any power, which never did anyways, but that's another point. So they're starting to get worried that, this is a problem and we need to fix this. And so they tell the scientist he needs to go and fix this problem. Now, here's another sequence that just, even from the trailer, when I saw the trailer and this was in the trailer, I was like, what the hell? Okay, so the scientist went down to his lab.
The Gelfling know nothing of the Skeksis' crimes. The truth must come to light. The fires of rebellion must be lit. And a new age must begin.
There's the theme. There's the theme. They finally got there. We're 6.5 minutes in before we finally get to the real theme of this story. And it's not grand as it is. It sounds like it's being played on like a digital piano, some little kid's Casio. But it's there. I mean, I give them kudos. They finally showed up 6.5 minutes in, but you're not going to hear it much the rest of the time. So there it is. Now, anybody notice anything different between this picture, what's going on here, and the movie? I'll give you a hint. In the original film, there were not claw thingamybobs pulling the crystal down the chamber of the shaft of air and fire. You know why? Because that's not how it worked. The crystal is stationary. You can't just like pick it up and move it around. It's not like a little spinning top that you can just like, oh, well, I want it over here now. How they do that in the original one, because you can't move the crystal. Now, it's never stated that you can't move the crystal, but the crystal, pardon me, is in that location for a reason. If you could move it around, up and down, side, left ways, why wouldn't they have just moved the crystal anywhere they wanted? The impression that is given is that the crystal has to stay there. It has to stay where it's at. It is in that position for a reason. Now, okay, that's never specifically stated, but that's the way I always understood it. Maybe that's my mistake. I'll give them that much. But in the original one, there's a reflector that catches the beams from the crystal that they use to harvest the essence and all that stuff. They don't bring the crystal. It's like they did this just for, an excuse to do some visual effects. And that's one of the biggest, there's so many problems with Hollywood. One of the main problems with Hollywood right now is that they are so obsessed with visual effects, practical or otherwise, where the story ends up taking a back seat because they want to put in some cool visual. You know what? Let's have these claws come up and grab the crystal, pull it down into the scientist's chamber. And oh yeah, by the way, some chains are going to shoot out from nowhere. You can't even explain why those things shoot out there or why they land where they do. It goes back to, I think, trying to reinforce that whole "the crystal is our prisoner" thing that they set up. But you got these claws that are sitting there holding on to it, pull it down into the thing and make it sit there. And why? So that later on he can have this machine come out with these two little spinny dooley bobs with lights in them, and it shoots electricity at the crystal. Let's go find that particular little point in the story. Because it's... Sorry, we're going to have to just... I'm zooming through here to see if I can find that scene where they do that for the first time. Like I said, I feel like this whole sequence right here with the claws and the whole blah, blah, blah is all done with... Okay, here we go. So here's this scene. Hey, somebody needs to get worried about the fact that the Joker's voice from the animated Batman's in this movie. Just kidding. It's Mark Hamill. I love it. Look at the lightning! Oh. Okay, so it starts to suck away his skin, and then it starts to drain his essence, pulling away years of his life. Okay, and that's how they realize that the crystal can do this. It's considered a failed experiment until Chamberlain comes in and says, "Nuh-uh, you can make this steal essence for you." I do a bad Chamberlain impersonation. I apologize. Anyway, so I feel like this whole thing with the thing pulling it down and the chains and everything was just to do this special effects shot. It's the whole reason they did the whole damn thing. Because having a reflector come out from the wall and boo, shoot a beam, that's just so 1980s. So 1980s. We need lightning bolts and stuff in 2019. Kids aren't going to watch something without lightning bolts. Anyway. So the story comes, there's this princess, the main rulers live in the big, they're the first clan they talk about. So they're the Vapra, and then the Stonewoods, and then the Groton are the three tribes that you're told about of the seven. And the Vapra, there's like princesses, and then there's the leader, and I can't remember what her title is, it's queen, basically. And one of the princesses is really into books and knowledge and learning. And then there's a side story that's happening where there's a gelfling in the castle. Because the castle, where they do this secret thing all the time to steal life from the crystal, is full of gelflings and podlings. So I'm not sure how you do a secret ceremony in a castle that's full of gelflings guarding you and podlings that are serving you and giving you dinner and making sweeties and stuff, which that's also in this. Another point in the story. So here's one of the princesses. These are two of the princesses that we're talking about that are part of the Vapra. And then it takes you to the underground world where the Groton live. And there's this little chickie poo here. And she is the chosen one in this film, or in this series. So she is the chosen one, because we ain't going to have no man be no chosen one this time, which is fine. I'm actually okay with a girl being chosen in this, other than the fact it seems very unoriginal in 2019. It's like, this is the new thing. Why don't you go against the grain just once? And I don't know, maybe have another dude be the chosen one, or have a chosen one, or chosen pair, man, woman, showing their differences and their strengths as individual. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I forgot. In 2019, we're not allowed to say that men and women are different. They're the same. Anyway, now, so the side stories going on is these two are in love with each other. They're castle guards. This is their stupid best friend in the background here. And they're looking for a spitter, which is what they call a giant spider in this world, apparently. We never saw them in the original, but they're here now. So she gets killed by the Skeksis. They use her to drain the essence from a Gelfling for the first time. They pin the murder on him. He's trying to run away. He sees what happens. He's trying to run out and tell everybody what's going on now and how horrible stuff's going on. And the chosen girl, she gets attacked by... So this is the scene in which I'm jumping around here, and I apologize for that. I'm just... it doesn't really matter how this happens because it's all kind of disjointed throughout the story anyway. So she's flying through the caves like I showed you. She lands and she starts giving some moss to these little wormy creature things here. But there's something wrong with the moss now. There's a evil thing in it, and she gives it to there. And all the rest of them have had this light glow thing that she's been feeding. And now she tries to give this little guy this moss that's suddenly turned into dark moss or something, and his eyes go purple. He looks like one of my daughter's little light-up toys that she sleeps with. And he goes crazy, tries to get her. Then one of the big animals, it's like her parrot, tries to get her right after that. And then I'm having a hard time getting a good picture of the critter that's trying to eat her. So and then she gets away. That's when she gets chosen. She goes to the century tree or the central tree or something like that and gets told that there's a major problem. That's actually a pretty cool sequence. I have to give it to him on that. And like I say, visually, very good. It is very good. The puppeteering is excellent and stuff. It's just there's enough wrong with the story right off the bat that it really kept me from getting into this right off the bat. And then I am channeling my frustrations into this review so that you can understand what's happening here, because it's just not that great. And seriously, it feels very much Game of Thrones. The Chamberlain is like the whispermonger who's going around. In the film, he's seen as kind of the pathetic little snot boy of the entire thing and the whipping boy. Now in this one, he gets elevated to the status of like the castle brains. You know, he's the subterfuge guy. He's the guy in the background whispering secrets in the emperor's ears and stuff like that, which is okay. They changed his character around a little bit to make him maybe more interesting and stuff like that. But it's just kind of crazy how they're doing this. Anyway, they go through this, they learn how to draw essence, and then it starts to become about a chase. The one princess girl, this is the queen of the Vapra, or queen of them all, actually. But yeah, I'm losing my train of thought and even wanting to. Okay, this is the crystal sucking the life out of the girl that the guy gets blamed for, and then he gets seen. They drink her essence and realize it makes them strong. The emperor gets really excited about that, and then the scientist is like, hey, stop drinking all the essence. I need to do research on that. And you see him here pouring it into a bottle. That becomes important later on. And then you see the little chosen girl here. Oh, nope, that's the princess. Sorry. It's not showing you who I want it to show you. Oh, there she is. So this is the Groton girl from underground. They look different. They're like darker skin pigmentation. They kind of look greenish color. I think mainly because of the moss that they eat and stuff. Anyway, and so she tries to get there, and here's a picture of the century tree or whatever it is, and this is where she emerges to start on her quest to try and save Thra. So that is really edited version, Reader's Digest version of trying to tell you what's going on here, because this review is starting to feel like the song that never ends, and I don't want you guys to feel like that. But so far, with this first episode, I can tell you this much. I'm not feeling it. Now, I have watched a couple more of the episodes, and it feels like they're starting to get a little bit more. They actually do mention the Mystics at some point in one of the next episodes, and I'm just like, well, but they're mentioned like they're just some side group of characters and race that don't have any connection. So, quite honestly, I think I'm going to have trouble doing a review on every single one of these episodes. I'm going to try my best to break them down for you. This first review is extra long because I wanted to cover the problems between the first film and this first episode, and the fact that they are really like confusing the storylines. If you're familiar and if you love the original story, you're going to get lost in this. You're just going to be like, I don't understand what's going on here. Why, what, who, where are the other clans? What's happening here? Why aren't the Mystics getting mentioned? Why are we not shown how the castle like all the questions I brought up? These are questions that I had. I'm like, okay, now the castle's just suddenly there and it doesn't look white. Because you remember if you remember from the film, at the end, when they restore the crystal, the castle turns a brilliant white. Well, it had to have been that color originally when they built that. And it's not. It's not shown. It's not shown as ever being white. It's shown as being dingy and grungy right off the bat, and that the Skeksis are already in power. Well, that's not what the original story told us. We are told in the original story from the original film that the race is split, and then the Skeksis seize control. They don't bribe Algra to take it away from her. They seize control of the castle, which means the castle was already built at that point. Anyway, I can go off for a long time on this because it's just frustrating that they did not do the research and try and piece this story together in such a way as that you don't sit there and have to make these huge leaps. And it's not giving me hope for this. I'm really worried. Like I said, visually pleasing, very well. The puppeteering is done quite well. The special effects are good and stuff like that. But you know what? I find myself saying those words about movies all the time. It looks good. The story sucks, but the visual effects are great. And oh, that's pretty. And ooh, shiny object. And that's all they seem to focus on. Hey, we'll just keep them confused with bright, shiny colored objects. And we're just supposed to sit there like SpongeBob holding the orb of confusion. So pretty. I'm sorry. I'm not a fool, and I don't like being taken for one. So we're going to see where this goes. I hope it gets better. I hope I can actually get positive about this show and just be like, it's the best ever. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. So, thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoy this review. It's pretty long, so you might have to break it up into a couple different viewings to get through it. And I hope it gives you an idea of what you're in for with this. You're either going to love it because of the visuals and you never had much connection to the original film, or you're going to sit there and be ticked off the whole time because your connection to the original film keeps you from enjoying this because they did not do what they should have done and pay proper homage and leave this where it should have been. And it's really sad. And I hope it gets better. I hope that they undo the damage by further storytelling. I hope they tell you where the hell the other 4 clans are and what's going on with them. They've kind of mentioned another clan, but they didn't really set them up as a clan. They just set them up as like sea people that are fight. All right, I'm jumping ahead of the story here, so I apologize. But it's just, I'm hoping it's getting better. And so far, it's interesting. But I wish I had never seen the original film because it's going to make it really hard to, and that's the problem. If your show makes me wish that I had never watched something that I loved before so that I can enjoy what you're doing, you've done it wrong. You've done it wrong. And there's no way around that. There's just no way. You should have made it better. You should have added to the story, made it more compelling, more in-depth, more so that when you got to the movie, if you're doing a prequel, when you get to the original films, you're just like, this makes total sense. And now I love this movie even more. But you're going to get to the movie from this thing and go, huh? What? That doesn't make any sense. At least from this standpoint, right now, I'm telling you. So anyway, hit that like button. It very much helps me to get my voice out there and to get more people coming in and taking a look at what I'm doing here. And I appreciate all the views and comments. I really do. Even if you don't agree with me, even if you feel very negatively about what my reviews are doing, I appreciate the views and I appreciate your opinions. And I'm more than willing to discuss the differences. Maybe you can help me see why I need to enjoy this more. But you can't just say, just forget the path, Brian, because that's not going to work. That's not going to work. You've got to help me. You've got to help me get from A to B, because right now the chasm that they've left me between these two is huge. And I can't just jump across it in a little hop and a skip. I'm going to need somebody to put me in a cannon and fire me to the other side. And I don't know if that's possible. Anyway, but hit that subscribe, hit your notification, hit that little bell for notifications for when my future reviews drop. I'm going to try and do these as quick as possible, but I have to work and I have 6 children and I have a life that I'm trying to keep up with too. So, they may be sporadic, and you may have watched this series and be on to something else by the time I get finished. But hopefully we can watch this together and really enjoy it, or at least critique the crap out of it together, or whatever it ends up becoming. So anyway, get out there and have yourselves a great day. Thanks for watching, and we will talk to you next time. Bye now.